Happy 2022, everyone! Hope it hasn't royally sucked so far for you. Fingers crossed it's gonna be an improvement over last year. I'm shoving together 3 lists into one video, since they'll be pretty short lists by comparison to my bottom and top 10 lists. Those lists being my top 5 disappointments. Quick caveat, nothing on that list is necessarily bad, but I went in with certain expectations and I was let down. Then it'll be my top 4 pleasantly surprised list. Again, those picks won't be especially good movies, but just the reverse of the disappointments. Had expectations and came out pleasantly surprised. And finally will be my top 5 best bad movies. The movies that were, no doubt, garbage fires. But for all intents and purposes, I enjoyed them. They entertained me, and that deserves special spotlight to me. So let's get into it, starting with my top 5 disappointments. Number 5. No Time to Die. James Bond returns. After a botched romantic retreat with Léa Seydoux, James is brought back into the fold when Freddie Mercury shows up to kill all of Spectre. Boy howdy would I have rather watched that movie. Lots of gunplay, twists and turns, and you know what this has.
Why would I betray you?
We all have our secrets. We just didn't get to yours yet.
By no means a bad movie, but bear in mind that the prospect of this thing happening at all due to Daniel Craig's disdain for the role, as well as the critical mediocrity of Spectre, this movie feels lucky to have happened. With that said, for all its flaws, Spectre did feel like a closing of Bond's story, and No Time to Die is just a quick, desperate cash grab to close off this chapter of the franchise. Bond feels like a side character in his own movie. The villain is connected to Madeline's past, not James. He wants to kill Spectre and Blofeld, not James. Just your bog standard desire to kill the world as a means to cleanse it of undesirables. It's a gigantic wasted opportunity where the pieces of a truly great Bond film are there, but it's like the final product was the first draft and no one thought to push their own ideas further or knew which ideas were worth keeping and discarding.
How will I know that you're okay?
You won't. You'll never see me again.
What saves the picture is the heartbreakingly great performance out of Craig, and Léa Seydoux is always a quality talent. Certain plot points were interesting, albeit for those aforementioned missed opportunities. Thank God it wasn't nearly as woke as the trailers made it out to be, and some of the action scenes were some of the best in the Bond franchise. Again, this has incredible ideas, and hopefully wherever the franchise begins again, they'll take the ideas presented here and polish them up.
Why didn't you shut Heracles down?
I answer to the interest of my country, not you.
And to Felix Leiter?
I certainly don't answer to Felix Leiter.
What makes this all the more heartbreaking is that it doesn't matter if you want to end this franchise on either Spectre or No Time to Die, as either is a lackluster outing with the world's most famous spy. Though give Spectre some credit, it at least ended on a happy note, and No Time to Die just feels like a drawn-out farewell. I won't deny it did more than a few things right, but this was a pretty weak swan song for Craig Bond, and you really aren't missing out by skipping it or getting a whole lot out of it if you do end up watching it. If you have a vested interest in these movies, might as well cap it off. If not, hope your experience is better than mine.
I get why you shot him.
Yeah, well, everyone tries at least once.
Number 4. Violet. Violet is on the verge of a mental breakdown over her unsatisfactory life.
You seriously eating a snowball for breakfast?
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to be ironic.
Pig.
As a lifelong simp for Olivia Munn, thanks to Attack of the Show, to say that I was excited to see her as a more dramatic actor and as the lead no less would be a monumental understatement, and was looking forward to supporting the flick. I wanted this to be a serious Oscar contender for the Queen of Nerds. Make no mistake, this is far and away her best performance of her career. The movie has rock-solid ideas portraying anxiety, and using Justin Theroux as the literal voice in her head talking down to her was downright ingenious. And I won't deny that the bittersweet ending is far more relatable than I want to admit.
You need to come out. You haven't been here much at all since your father died.
I have to...
After what? Book a flight?
With all that said, where it falls short is certain artistic choices. At the end of nearly every scene, the screen shades red, an obvious indicator of Violet reaching her breaking point, and a god-awful irritating noise to complement it. I would legit get a headache for how drawn out it could get.
Do that. I've known Tom Gaines for a really long time, and I started my career there. Honestly, I don't even think I could do this without Tom's.
For all intents and purposes, it's a good indie flick, but held back by the more annoying artsy-fartsy attempts. I'll never stop showing Munn's support and love, but her talent was sorely wasted on a movie that almost had something golden, but fell woefully short.
I'm really sorry for how I was with you.
Thanks.
Number 3. Pieces of a Woman. Vanessa Kirby is married to Shia LaBeouf, but miscarries their child and struggles with her life and marriage after.
You know, your mom tells me absolutely everything. I know everything. Yeah.
Once again, by no means a bad movie. I believe Vanessa Kirby to be a legitimately good actress, and this movie proves that if called to be dramatic and to excel, she can do it. It's not the kind of story that calls for big explosive emotions. It's surprisingly reserved and nuanced, which is a rarity for this kind of movie, and deeply appreciated.
Do you really want to put your little baby's body on a mass grave like an animal? Oh my God. Yeah, that's funny to you? Yeah.
It falls short in 2 key areas. Number 1, the god-awful camera work focusing on the actors' backs, or nothing at all. As a kid who's taken acting classes since he was knee-high, the one thing every teacher has in common is tell you, never act with your back to the audience. The same somewhat applies to motion pictures, but they do this a lot, which irritated me beyond words. The other poorly aged element is Shia LaBeouf. This came out in the wake of his abuse scandal, and there's a scene where his character forces himself on his wife. If there was anything that this movie didn't need, was bad optics, and really discourages me from ever wanting to watch this again.
Well, I talked to Robert, and he hasn't seen you in 3 weeks, so you're telling what? You don't have to lie to me.
Despite Kirby's well-deserved Oscar nom, and I firmly believe she's capable of winning one in the future, this was a woefully botched movie in surprisingly amateurish ways. If you can look past the flaws that I listed, then I am jealous of the positive experience you most likely had, but I couldn't, so it wasn't for me.
You have to do this, Martha. You have to speak your truth. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to deal with this.
Number 2. Those Who Wish Me Dead. Angelina Jolie is a firefighter struggling with a past trauma. She meets a young boy who is hunted by mercenaries who killed his father and is holding on to important information, and Jolie takes it upon herself to protect the boy.
I want to see where the blood's coming from. It's not my blood. Whose blood is it?
The fact that I have anything especially negative to say about this is about the most heartbreaking thing I've ever had to do in all my years of watching any movie this past decade. When it comes to simple moviegoers, everyone remembers actors and directors, but few ever bother with taking the time to know writers. They are the backbone of cinema and rarely get the credit they deserve. Taylor Sheridan is one such writer who has done a fabulous job of carving out a name for himself, having penned some truly celebrated films by both critics and moviegoers alike. Both Sicarios, Hell or High Water, if you're anything like my dad, you're probably gaga over Yellowstone, and my personal favorite flick of his, Wind River. With all that under his belt, this should have been far better than it was, and seemingly all the pieces were there to make it good. But 2021 proved to be an off year for Sheridan. Sadly, the writing was underwhelming, and seemed to be a missed opportunity for some seriously tense action. There's extraordinarily stupid scenes and story structure, and some of the most forgettable and incompetent villains in a thriller that I've seen this year.
What are you waiting for? Give me the word, Jack. Come on, give him the word. I'm gonna fucking die right here. Right here. Jack, give me the word. Fuck you. And fuck you.
I won't pretend that this doesn't have its redeeming qualities. The kid was surprisingly good given the material he had to work with. The climax is legitimately tense and should have been the whole movie if we're honest, and it's shot very well. By no means is this poorly made, it's just poorly executed where you'd think it would be stellar. I'll still keep an eye out for Sheridan's future work and support him, as most of these blunders might have an explanation, but as it stands, this wasn't his finest outing.
Let it out, buddy. Let it out.
Before we hit the #1 disappointing movie of the year, here are some honorable mentions. Batman: The Long Halloween Part 2. Part 1 was so good, it was like animated Dark Knight. Why did Part 2 become an over-the-top action fest out of nowhere? Reminiscence. Love Hugh Jackman and Rebecca Ferguson, but such weak material and an obvious ending felt like this should have been given to unknown actors. The Little Things. Denzel's talents and Leto's creepiness are wasted on a diet version of Seven. Raya and the Last Dragon. God Emperor Disney continues their long streak of letdowns and reinforces too many modern Western stereotypes and tropes. Halloween Kills. This could have been awesome, but drops the ball hard. At least there's the Firefighter Massacre. Lamb. Critics said this was scary, but I'm not convinced it's even a horror movie. Just a day-in-the-life story about a couple and their weird baby with a lamb's head. And the #1 disappointing movie of 2021, Mortal Kombat. The story follows a character named Cole. He's not from the games, and he's been chosen to fight in the Mortal Kombat martial arts tournament. However, he's being hunted by Sub-Zero, so he can't participate in said tournament, but is assisted by other familiar characters from the game.
It signifies that you've been chosen to fight for Earth. It's an invitation to fight for something known as Mortal Kombat.
Without a doubt, the crap crown of the year in terms of disappointment goes to this stinker. How you screw this up so badly, especially compared to the original movies, and yes, I'd still rather watch Annihilation than this, which were schlocky B-movie entertainment, it should have been the easiest thing in the world to make this cool and updated. Instead, what we get is a protagonist about as bland as Wonder Bread, shoddy CGI, bad writing, and entire future plot points pissed on by certain character deaths. It tries to explain magic as if embarrassed by the source material. Some fan favorites neither look nor act like their counterparts, or have a pathetic amount of screen time that one would have to wonder if it was worth putting them in the movie at all.
Kinda wins.
The only thing that saves this from being god-awful is the welcomed gory violence. Some characters are entertaining enough, and the casting for the central characters is rock solid. Very specifically, Hiroyuki Sanada as Scorpion and Joe Taslim as Sub-Zero stole the show. I enjoy that some easily overlooked characters got to shine, and the opening fight scene between Scorpion and Sub-Zero is about as awesome as a fight scene can get.
Want me to slow down a little?
I can't overstate how perfectly campy the previous movies were, and how more modernized interpretations of Mortal Kombat are possible, but this wasn't it. I don't want a sequel. Give it 5 years and try again. But if they do give me a sequel, then get rid of the writing team and get someone who actually wants to do Mortal Kombat justice. Hell, give me a chance and I can salvage this one and show you professional screenwriters how it's done.
Get over here!
And now for the top 4 pleasantly surprising movies of 2021. I didn't have 5 movies that took me by surprise. I mean, I did, but they're in my top 17 list, so yeah, sorry, this is going to be an oddball series of lists this year. Number 4, Coming to America. Eddie Murphy as Prince Akeem is back. In the wake of his father's death, Akeem needs an heir to his throne, but only has daughters. His hide is saved when he learns that he has a bastard son in America from when he was last there and scrambles to bring him back and claim his throne.
It is better to be bound by blood in marriage than be divided by blood and war.
This might be a controversial pick, as it seems to be reviled by the masses, but compared to Murphy's output in the mid to late 2000s, this was a phenomenal improvement. I had some decent laughs and chuckles, which is more than most modern comedies offer. Some callback jokes kinda worked, Wesley Snipes stole the show, and James Earl Jones's funeral, as sent off by Morgan goddamn Freeman, was beyond hilarious.
When he died, no one ever smiled again. People didn't even have sex anymore.
I won't sit here and pretend it was legit good. I'm not that charitable. Akeem this go-around is not remotely as likable as he was in the original, which does cripple. You have that tired trope of the girl being overlooked for responsibilities so the inexperienced boy can run the show and moping and doping for most of her screen time. Hey, at least it's a tired trope from 30 years ago. At least it's something different besides the tropes of today.
And the image and the style that you used to. I look funny. But you don't make money, see, so the whole world look around for me.
I don't agree with the general populace. No, it doesn't hold a candle to the original, but it ain't Pluto Nash, y'all.
Never again shall there be another surprise.
What? Look at this boy! I got to get some shots.
Number 3. Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. Barb and Star are middle-aged best friends who get fired from their job and decide to go on vacation to Vista Del Mar. Unbeknownst to them, supervillainous Sharon Gordon Fisherman plans to kill the populace of Vista Del Mar for ominous reasons and sends her love-struck minion, the 50 Shades of Grey guy, to kickstart the chaos.
Would anyone like a drink before we get started?
No, thank you.
Well, I'm going to make myself a suicide.
Oh man, if you're looking for a comedy that's beyond bonkers and zany, then look no further than Barb and Star. I fully admit that it takes some getting used to, as their hyper-fast talking and back and forth is enough to drive a person into the loony bin, but once you get to the meat of the, what can be generously considered a story, when you realize that this is a buddy road trip comedy inside a James Bond movie, complete with a villain played by an unrecognizable Kristen Wiig, who wants to kill a bunch of people with super poisonous mosquitoes. That's where your brain will make the tactical decision that this is right up your alley or only gonna get worse from here. And considering how messed up my brain is wired, this is about as stupidly endearing as a movie can get. Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo have wildfire chemistry. Jamie Dornan is utterly hilarious. His Edgar Prayer song had me in stitches. Damon Wayans Jr., the celebrity cameos, I can't tell you how odd it is and yet how well it works.
I'm a frustrated man, now I'm flicking my tiptoes to kick up the sand, cause I can't understand.
Barb and Star evokes a style of silly comedy that died off in the early 2000s and would have fit wonderfully alongside the likes of The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and whatever Adam Sandler was dishing out. Sadly, that level of nonsense is about as niche as a modern comedy can get. I won't pretend that every joke lands, but I can't deny that there's a certain charm and a twisted heart to this insanity that oddly clicked with me. Grab your best friend, slap on your culottes, and go on vacation with Barb and Star.
Men find me disgusting, and I'm okay with it. Star, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. You could model for F and Chicos, and I'm not just saying that.
Number 2. The Night. An Iranian couple with a rocky marriage and their infant child make a stop at a hotel to catch some much-needed rest. However, the longer they stay there, the more they realize how freaky-deaky this hotel is. If you told me at the beginning of the year that an Iranian horror film released in February, the month where bad horror movies go, and it would have been one of the best movies of the year, I would have called you a damn dirty liar and would have told you to take shots of bleach because I'm a hardcore edgelord like that. Boy, howdy, is that joke on me. But for real, I did not expect to like this movie as much as I did, and it was on my top list for quite some time before it got dethroned. Its psychological elements may not be the best on the market, but when it nails it, dear God, does it screw with your mind. There's no clear-cut answers as to what exactly is going on, but I can see a whole lot of folks dishing out their own interpretations and what they read into, and I can imagine it's one hell of a brain tease.
No, I understood completely. Okay, you said you heard sounds. You said you saw people disturbing you, but they're not here now.
I can't recommend this enough. If you have Hulu, I recommend it wholeheartedly.
کجا بودی؟
کجا بودم؟ کجا بودم من؟ قاطی کردی دوباره؟
حالا کجا بودی؟
جوابت بدم دیگه شورشو در بیار.
And the number one pleasantly surprising movie of 2021 is Jungle Cruise. Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt go on an adventure to find a magic flower, but an evil German jerk wants it for himself.
So that's why you want to go? Your daddy's bedtime stories?
Look, can you get us there or not? This has just been a colossal waste of my time.
Despite being marred by delay after delay, not at all helped by the pandemic, God Emperor Disney's latest attempt to movify a popular ride should have been one of the great disasters of 2021, but it happens to be, without a doubt, the most pleasant of surprises. By no means good. Its borderline cartoonish action sequences cross lines into being too ridiculous at times. I continue to not be a particular fan of Johnson, and the long-running joke about Blunt's character wearing pants got tired faster than a raging rapid.
Before this, I used to work in an orange juice factory, but I got canned. Couldn't concentrate. Yeah, they put the squeeze on me too.
With that said, Blunt's mere presence elevates this higher than it had any right to be. Her comedic timing and charm alone made this worth watching. Despite occasionally going too overboard with its cartoonish action, for the most part, its over-the-top nature is highly entertaining, evoking a bygone age of swashbuckling and lighthearted adventure that is sorely missed. Despite the bad CGI for the ghostly jobber villains, it's creative in its designs and some are pretty hardcore for a kid-friendly movie, but it's a welcomed edge.
Save the world.
I didn't say save the world.
It's very noble.
Well, thank you.
It's also very stupid.
You are deeply unpleasant.
We need to be honest with ourselves, this is basically Pirates of the Caribbean, but harkening back to when that franchise was just a pirate movie rather than trying to be an epic. It's a fun enough action-adventure that knows what it is and doesn't try to be anything else. While I can't say that I'm looking forward to the eventual sequel, as this does feel like lightning in a bottle, by itself, it was a cutesy time and I enjoyed myself a lot more than I thought I would.
So that fight.
Faked it.
For goodness sake, Frank! Is there a single thing about you that I can trust?
Not a thing.
And the final list for this video, the top 5 best bads. Number 5. Sharing this slot is Willy's Wonderland and Prisoners of the Ghostland. Willy's Wonderland follows Nick Cage, who is roped into cleaning out a run-down Chuck E. Cheese type place, but the animal animatronics are alive and murderous. Things are only made more complicated when hooligan teenagers break in to destroy the place, but one by one are killed by the machines. Prisoners of the Ghostland is set in a freaky-deaky world of samurai, cowboys, and Mad Max-esque psychos, and follows Cage as a hired gun to locate his wealthy employer's missing niece that ran away. Nikki C hasn't had the best run of movies in quite some time, starring in some seriously schlocky stuff that most people haven't either seen or heard of. But every once in a while, one of those schlocks is actually worth watching, and this year alone proved to be a wondrous treat of insanity and visually bizarre weirdness that only the most depraved minds could conjure up, let alone put to film. Willy's Wonderland sees Cage as a silent protagonist who nonchalantly cleans this dump of a place while fighting these possessed machines. He always makes sure to take a break, hork down some grape soda, and play some pinball. If that's not living the best life, I don't know what is. I would almost say that throwing in the horny teenagers that inevitably die in horrible ways is unnecessary, but one of their reactions to Cage and his reactions to the threats they all face are nothing short of the most hilarious shit you'll see this year. When setting yourself up to watch Ghostland, you need the proper mindset, and there's only one sentence needed to let you know what kind of nonsense you're in for. Cage has gone on record to say that this movie is the most insane thing he's ever made. Let that sink into your brain. Nicolas Cage, a man who is known for his own insanity, who has made a ton of batshit flicks in his career, this is the one that even he thinks is the most batshit. Folks, I believe this 100%. This has everything. Cowboys, samurai, Mad Max, and marinate that in some spicy Nick Cage sauce. Oh, this was a winner, all right. The world building is topsy-turvy. The acting ping-pongs from being over the top to non-existent. The color palette ranges from garishly colorful to vomit colors. It's truly all over the place. I won't pretend to know what the hell Sofia Boutella is doing in this, as she seems to be the only one legitimately trying to put out a decent performance, but then realizes what kind of movie she's in and just gives up halfway through.
Hey, kid. It ain't that kind of movie.
The sets are charmingly cheap looking, reminding me of the campy TV shows of the late 90s like The Lost World and Xena. And above all else, Cage reaches some wonderfully high cagey moments. Both of 2021's Nick Cage output was entertaining as balls. I love weird, shameless shit like this, so I can't wait to see what else is down the line for the man.
Want to see my treehouse? Not today, girlfriend.
If you had told me 3 days ago I'd be standing here with one arm and one testicle, trying to reason with you.
Number 4. The Mimic. A pretentious writer thinks his young neighbor, whom he doesn't like, is a sociopath, and the two constantly challenge each other over who is right and wrong about each other's state of mind.
And what happens if you decide you want to stay with the ducks?
Oh, then we're gonna have a problem.
You ever had them before?
Before the ducks?
Yeah.
And the mushrooms?
Yeah.
And the cheating?
Whoa!
If you've never heard of this movie, I'm not the least bit surprised. Might be a running theme in my lists, to be fair. While I can't in good conscience recommend anyone watch this, it somehow struck a particular chord for me in just how pretentiously hilarious the writing is. The characters talk in such a fast-paced kind of way that it would make Gilmore Girls feel like it has competition. Both characters are utter morons in how they think they're intellectual, and not just one, but 50 steps ahead of the other, but we, the audience, are wondering how these grown-ass men were allowed to leave their houses without their helmets.
The guy who drove the car was my friend.
The guy who's driving the car got divorced.
He was unhappy.
I'm unhappy.
I won't pretend there's some bits that can be drawn out. You'll doze off now and again. But if you're into loopy bullshit trying to act like refined satire, then you're in for something else, man.
1 in 25 people is a sociopath.
What are you saying?
I'm saying I just did a head count and it doesn't look good for you.
Number 3. The Matrix Resurrections. Neo is back, thinking the OG movies were a video game he created. He finds out it was all real, regains some of his memory, and wants to free Trinity, whom doesn't remember who she is, from the new Matrix alongside new characters.
I'm sure you can understand why our beloved parent company, Warner Brothers, has decided to make a sequel to the trilogy.
What?
Just getting this out of the way, Trinity is not the one. Moving on. To put Resurrections on this particular list might seem blasphemous to both sides of the fence, those who say this movie was bad and who say it's good. This is the best compromise I can possibly give to either party. To those who say it's bad, I agree. It makes a mockery of the original movies, ego strokes itself, rehashes pretty much every single idea it had previously, recycled scenes with none of the charisma that made the original memorable or endearing. The action scenes are woefully underwhelming and even get lazy with the repeated wall running and shooting, but what new ideas it does present are about as memorable as that overbloated scene with the architect from Reloaded.
How am I doing? I don't know. I don't even know how to know.
On the other hand, to those who think it's good, I agree, but not legitimately. For a few of those reasons why it's bad, those are the reasons I enjoyed it. I referenced the video game Path of Neo in my rapid fire, and also referenced how the game sort of makes fun of the movies too. So, the Wachowskis taking jabs at themselves feels almost like a continuation of that, and it oddly worked for me. The romantic relationship between Neo and Trinity in the OG trilogy felt stagnant and even corny by today's standards, which feels rectified here. They're allowed to express more than one emotion, talk about their feelings, their lives, even though there are some questionable caveats to that, and it certainly subverts the expectation of modern audiencing the characters, completely nerfing the men, making them dumb and useless, and instead placing undeserved importance on the women. This actually offers the best alternative in having them be equals. Gee, what a fucking concept in this woke-ass day and age.
Never had kids.
Oh, right. I knew that. Sorry, I Googled you.
Yeah, you get some bullshit character replacements, none of which makes any real sense, but this was, for all intents and purposes, just as entertaining as the previous movies, but for wildly different reasons. Legit fans of the franchise have my sympathies if you didn't like this, but as someone who is relatively indifferent toward the movies and saw them as products of their time, this wasn't exactly a letdown for me. I enjoyed myself well enough, even though this might not be what the majority want to hear.
Thomas, please, this is not a game. Feel my hand. This is what is real.
Number 2. A House on the Bayou. This married couple is having problems because he cheated on her. In an attempt to repair their broken marriage, they go on a trip to a house on the bayou with their teenage daughter. It's not long before they meet this creepy-ass dude and his grandpappy who may or may not be human, and start terrorizing them in this house that may or may not be evil magic.
Take your grandson and get out of here.
He's not my grandson.
What? What do you mean he's not your grandson?
I mean he's not my grandson.
Blumhouse never seems to disappoint with their output. Even when their work is bad, it's still incredibly entertaining and bonkers, and House on the Bayou is no exception. The whole point of their family trip is to repair their broken marriage, but the wife spends the entire first 15 some odd minutes being extremely bitter and spiteful about the whole incident. Fair enough, I suppose, but the constant passive-aggressive jabbing is so counterproductive that I couldn't help feel two things: tickled and a looming sense that this movie is prepping me for a bizarre time. Lo and behold, I wasn't freaking wrong. The moment we meet Isaac, he starts hitting on the 14-year-old daughter, when he fully admits that he's 18. We later learned that he's in his 20s, and later learned that he's ageless. It only ever gets fucking worse with this guy.
You know what, Anna? You look a lot like my ex-girlfriend.
I do?
Yeah. Way cuter, though.
But instead of being outrageously disgusting, which it is, it does the unthinkable and makes me laugh for how utterly shameless it is with all this. Not that anything happens, it's never framed to be charming or in a positive light, but the fact that they go this route, and it only serves to make the movie feel creepy, but not in the intended way, only served to make me laugh at how hardcore it was clearly trying to be and failing to do so. The performances are unnecessarily dedicated in their hamminess. Everyone is a moron, and the twists and turns do nothing but add layer upon layer to seem intricate but feels more like a funhouse that only gets more fun as you get deeper in.
You make me feel like slitting my wrists.
Then fucking do it.
And the message, dear God, if it's even accurate to call it that, is all about being punished for your sins, and yet the asswipes dishing out all this punishment are arguably worse. Okay, as the story progresses, every single person aside from the girl deserves to be mauled by a demon wolf.
We should get some ice cream sometime. I'm 18. I'll drive.
Guys, this is so stupid. So stupid that I've seen comedies that didn't make me laugh this hard, or dramas that made me sit at the edge of my seat wondering where else this rabbit hole is going, only to be floored by more madness. Blumhouse, I salute you.
Don't worry. If you're righteous, you'll survive.
Before we get to my number one pick for the best bad movie of 2021, here are some honorable mentions. Chick Fight. Malin Ackerman as an MMA fighter way over her head, it's funnier than it sounds. Breaking news in Yuba County. If Allison Janney is trying to copy Nicolas Cage's career in wacky-ass movies, then this is a pretty stupidly fun way to go. Infinite. Doesn't make a lick of sense, but I'd be lying if the creatively mindless action scenes didn't keep me entertained, as well as Mark Wahlberg's own annoyance with this movie. And my number one pick for the best bad movie of 2021 is Me, You, Madness. A rich woman who is a narcissist and a sociopathic serial murderer lures an unsuspecting petty thief to her home under the pretense that they're gonna be roommates in her giant home. Before she gets a chance to kill him, she finds stuff about him to be attracted to and decides not to kill him. But things take a turn, she kicks him out of her home, and in retaliation, he steals her car. The two reunite and she tries to kill him yet again.
What he is doing right now is casing my house. Or so he thinks. What he doesn't realize is that his being here is entirely by my own design.
It's a rom-com slasher. I literally can't think of another movie even remotely close to this. The first time I watched it, I was convinced I was going to hate it. The first third or so of this movie is just watching this unlikable woman bragging about her wealth, her health, and intellect. It took a very long time for me to officially understand what this thing even was, and when it finally got to the meat of the story, being a rom-com slasher, that's when everything picked up and became entertaining.
Oh, Catherine.
You wouldn't.
Put the knife down or the couch gets it.
The committed acting from writer, director, producer, and star Louise Linton was very good and clearly put a lot of love into this project. She has a hoity-toity charm that I found perfectly endearing, and the way that she and Ed Westwick bounce off of each other truly is adorable.
Like, eat it, My Little Pony. We're way cuter.
Super cute.
It's never been anything cuter than you and I.
Well...
Anyway.
I was legitimately swept up in the conundrum of these two characters who legitimately love each other in a twisted, moronic kind of way, trying to kill each other and not really wanting to, especially with Catherine. I don't want to sound like there's legit emotional stakes involved. Nothing about this movie is meant to be taken seriously, but for how kooky this whole premise is, it's oddly engaging.
You gonna do what exactly with that, huh? I mean, is that how the rest of these poor bastards went to with a fucking curling iron?
I won't pretend to say this is perfect. There are objective flaws. It takes way too long for the movie to get to where it needs to go, and I can see a bunch of people jumping ship before getting to the good stuff. Hell, I can see people watching the good stuff and not finding it worth the wait. I imagine that's the reason why it's getting raked through the coals by critics and audiences alike. The comedy is fairly weak with very few legit laughs. Personally, I found it more charming than funny, but that's a whole nother thing. The fourth wall breaking didn't bother me, but certain uses of it were unnecessary and clearly just Linton flexing her "look at all these movies I watched" muscles, while adding cartoon sound effects on occasion. It gets really bad at times, so I'm never going to blame anyone that doesn't like this movie for not liking it.
She didn't mean anything to me, baby, I swear.
Then why is she sending you pictures of her titties?
I didn't respond.
Because you were busy.
Busy thinking about you.
I personally found it cutesy enough and unique. Do I think it could be improved on? Absolutely. Do I think anyone's going to do this better? The foundation is certainly there. As it stands, I proudly stand by this movie and happily, though unsurprisingly, die on this hill. I enjoyed this flick. I was entertained. Take that for what you will.
Let's even the playing field.
Shit!
That's it for my top 5 mishmash list, so it's on to the final, more important 2. Let me know in the comments what movies you found to be disappointing, pleasantly surprising, or hilariously bad. In any case, have a great day, stay safe and healthy out there, hope to see you soon.